6 innocent women were gunned down in a coordinated gang hit because 2 rappers couldn't stop fighting on Instagram. That's not a headline from some dystopian nightmare. That's exactly what happened on January 16, 2023, in Seminole County, Florida. And the most disturbing part? The killers got the wrong people. We live in a world where social media beefs between celebrities can literally get you murdered, where gang members will steal multiple vehicles, coordinate a military-style ambush, and execute innocent people, all for what they call street validation. Where your daughter can go to a concert and end up dead because some rapper's ego got bruised online. This is the story of Princess Tolliver, a 31-year-old woman who worked for the Florida State University Police Department and died because gang members thought a famous rapper was riding in her van. She wasn't involved in any feud. She didn't know these people existed. She just wanted to see a concert with her friends. At 2:20 a.m. on January 16, 2023, Seminole County Sheriff's deputies witnessed something that defied belief. Multiple vehicles racing through the intersection of County Road 46A and Reinhardt Road, coordinating what could only be described as a professional hit. Gunfire erupted from a dark-colored sedan, systematically targeting a Mercedes Sprinter van filled with young women. This wasn't road rage. This wasn't a robbery. This was an execution, planned, coordinated, and carried out with military precision. The only problem, they were killing the wrong people. The deputies watched in horror as the attack unfolded, multiple shooters firing repeatedly into the van, while other vehicles blocked escape routes. The level of organization was staggering. 4 vehicles total, 2 of them stolen specifically for this operation. But here's what makes this case even more disturbing. The killers weren't even after Princess Tolliver and her friends. They were after a rapper named Jackboy, who had performed at a concert earlier that night. Gang members from a group called OTF, On Top Forever, had decided that shooting this rapper would somehow earn them respect in their criminal hierarchy. The fact that Jackboy wasn't even in the van didn't matter to them. The fact that they were about to murder 6 innocent women didn't give them pause. They had made their plans, stolen their vehicles, and they were going to execute it regardless of who died. The Mercedes Sprinter van tried desperately to escape the ambush, but there was nowhere to go. Bullets shattered windows, punctured metal, and tore through flesh. 6 young women who had done nothing wrong were fighting for their lives because strangers had decided their Instagram drama was worth killing for. In those terrifying moments, the van's driver made a decision that saved 5 lives. Instead of stopping at the scene, instead of waiting for the deputies to reach them, they kept driving straight to the nearest hospital. Every second counted, and that split-second decision meant the difference between 1 death and 6 deaths. When the bullet-riddled van pulled up to the emergency room, medical staff couldn't believe what they were seeing. 6 gunshot victims stumbling out of a vehicle that looked like it had been through a war zone. These weren't hardened criminals or gang members. These were young women who looked like they belonged in college, not a trauma bay. 5 of the women would survive their injuries, but Princess Tolliver wasn't so fortunate. At just 31 years old, her life ended because people she had never met decided that social media drama was worth committing murder over. The emergency room became a crime scene as law enforcement tried to piece together what had happened. The survivors were too traumatized to provide many details initially, but one thing was immediately clear: this level of violence didn't happen by accident. Back at the intersection, investigators found evidence of a coordinated attack. Shell casings from multiple weapons, tire marks showing the suspects had planned their positioning, and the chilling realization that this had been an ambush designed to kill everyone in that van. But perhaps the most disturbing discovery was yet to come. As detectives began their investigation, they would learn that this entire tragedy stemmed from an online feud between rappers that had escalated into real-world violence. Princess Tolliver died because gang members thought killing a musician would somehow make them more respected criminals. The suspects had fled into the night, but they left behind a community grappling with a new reality. If 6 innocent women could be executed in a case of mistaken identity, then no one was safe. If social media beef could lead to coordinated gang hits, then the line between online drama and real-world violence had completely disappeared. To understand how this nightmare began, we need to meet the woman whose life was stolen that night. Before we dive deeper into this case, we want to hear from you. What's the most dangerous situation you've ever found yourself in completely by accident? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe as we uncover the shocking truth behind this tragedy. Princess Tolliver wasn't supposed to die that night. She was supposed to drive home to Tallahassee, call her grandmother like she always did after a trip, and show up to work on Monday morning at the Florida State University Police Department, where her colleagues knew they could count on her. The name Princess fit her perfectly, according to everyone who knew her. Not because she was spoiled or demanding, but because she carried herself with a grace and warmth that made people feel special just being around her. Her grandmother, Barbara Flynn Tolliver, would light up whenever she talked about her granddaughter. She was a very outgoing young lady, a very sweet person, lovable person. Barbara would tell anyone who asked about Princess, but those simple words barely scratched the surface of who Princess really was. Princess had built a life centered around helping others. Her position at the FSU Police Department wasn't just a job, it was a calling. As a civilian employee, she served as a bridge between the community and law enforcement, helping people navigate some of the most difficult moments of their lives. Her colleagues respected her work ethic and reliability, qualities that made her indispensable to the department. But it was her family relationships that truly defined Princess as a person. Barbara spoke often about how Princess would do anything for her sisters, describing a young woman who understood that family meant everything. She was very, very close to her siblings, Barbara explained, and that bond drove much of what Princess did in her daily life. Princess was the kind of granddaughter who called regularly, who remembered birthdays and holidays, who showed up when family needed her. She was the one relatives turned to when they needed help, advice, or just someone to listen. Her work ethic was legendary within the family. Barbara proudly called her a very hard worker, but it was her generous spirit that made her irreplaceable. The weekend trip to Central Florida wasn't unusual for Princess. She had always been social, always ready for an adventure with her friends. Her circle included Shanae Ham and Dominique Jones, two women who had become like sisters to her over the years. They shared the kind of friendship that many people spend their whole lives searching for, genuine, supportive, and built on years of shared experiences. When the group decided to attend the concert in Sanford, Princess was immediately interested. Music had always been one of her passions, and the chance to experience live performances with her closest friends was exactly the kind of memory she loved creating. This wasn't about party lifestyle or reckless behavior. This was about friendship and making the most of life. Princess approached everything with intention and care. Her friends knew they could depend on her, whether they needed a ride, advice about relationships, or just someone to share good news with. She had a way of making ordinary moments feel special, of turning simple outings into cherished memories. Her professional life reflected the same thoughtfulness she brought to her personal relationships. Working for the FSU Police Department required patience, empathy, and the ability to remain calm under pressure. Princess excelled in this environment because she genuinely cared about helping people solve their problems and find solutions to difficult situations. Those who worked alongside her at FSU described someone who took pride in her contributions to campus safety and community well-being. She understood that her role, while not involving a badge or weapon, was crucial to the department's mission. Every person she helped, every crisis she assisted with, every small act of service she performed, all of it mattered to her. Princess had dreams beyond her current position. Friends and family knew she was always thinking about the future, always planning ways to grow personally and professionally. She talked about advancing her education, about expanding her role in public service, about the family she hoped to build someday. The weekend of January 15th and 16th was supposed to be a brief pause in her busy life, a chance to step away from work responsibilities, spend quality time with her closest friends, and enjoy some music. The plan was simple: drive to Central Florida, attend the concert, and return home to Tallahassee the next day. Princess was excited about the trip in the way that reveals someone's true character. She wasn't interested in wild partying or destructive behavior. She was genuinely happy about the prospect of creating new memories with people she loved. The concert was just an excuse to spend uninterrupted time with Shanae and Dominique, to laugh together, to enjoy music together, to strengthen bonds that had already lasted years. Her enthusiasm for simple pleasures, good friends, live music, road trips, reflected a woman who understood how to find joy in life without hurting others or creating drama. Princess lived quietly and purposefully, building relationships and contributing to her community without seeking attention or recognition. She was the kind of person who made everyone around her feel valued and important. Her grandmother's pride in her was matched by her friends' loyalty and her colleagues' respect. Princess had earned her place in people's hearts through consistent kindness, reliability, and genuine care for others' well-being. None of that mattered to the people who would end her life. The concert had been everything Princess and her friends hoped it would be. Jack Boy's performance in Sanford delivered exactly the kind of energy that made live music worth experiencing. The bass that you feel in your chest, the crowd singing along, the electric atmosphere that only happens when hundreds of people share the same moment. Princess Shanae and Dominique had secured spots where they could see everything clearly. They sang along to songs they knew by heart, took photos together, and soaked up every minute of the performance. This was exactly why they had made the trip from Tallahassee, for nights like these that would become stories they'd tell for years. As the concert wound down and the venue began emptying, the three friends felt that familiar post-concert high. Their ears were ringing. Their voices were hoarse from singing, and they were already reminiscing about their favorite moments from the show. The night had exceeded their expectations, and now all that remained was the drive back home. They had rented a Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van for the trip, practical transportation that gave them plenty of space and comfort for the journey. 3 other women had joined them for the weekend, turning their small group into a proper road trip crew. Everyone was in high spirits as they made their way to the vehicle. The decision to leave immediately after the concert was practical rather than impulsive. They all had responsibilities waiting back in Tallahassee: work, family obligations, and the routine demands of adult life. Princess, in particular, was mindful of her Monday morning schedule at the FSU Police Department. A late-night drive would get them home with enough time to rest before returning to their normal routines. The group settled into the spacious van, still buzzing with excitement from the concert. Someone connected their phone to the sound system, and soon the van was filled with music and conversation about the performance they had just witnessed. The atmosphere was relaxed and happy, 6 friends sharing the kind of effortless companionship that makes any journey enjoyable. As they pulled out of the concert venue and onto the roads leading away from Sanford, Princess felt content. The evening had been perfect, her friends were happy, and home was just a few hours away. She had no reason to pay special attention to other vehicles on the road or to worry about anything more dangerous than falling asleep during the drive. The Mercedes Sprinter van merged onto County Road 46A, following the route that would eventually connect them to major highways leading back to Tallahassee. It was nearly 2:20 a.m., and traffic was light. Most sensible people were asleep in their beds, leaving the roads to shift workers, long-distance travelers, and groups like theirs returning home from evening entertainment. None of the women noticed the other vehicles that had begun following them. They were too engaged in their own conversation, too focused on reliving the concert highlights, too trusting in the basic assumption that they were safe in their own vehicle on public roads. The attack began without warning. Suddenly, their peaceful post-concert journey became a nightmare beyond anything they could have prepared for. Multiple vehicles surrounded the van with coordinated precision, cutting off escape routes and trapping them in a deadly box formation. The first gunshot shattered more than just windows. They shattered the women's sense of reality. The sound was deafening inside the enclosed space of the van, mixing with screams and the crash of breaking glass. Everyone instinctively tried to get as low as possible, but there was nowhere to hide in the confined space. Bullets tore through the van's exterior, creating a storm of metal fragments and glass shards. The women pressed themselves against the floor, against seats, against each other, desperate to find protection that didn't exist. The shooting seemed to go on forever, though it probably lasted less than a minute. Princess felt the impact when the bullet found her. The pain was immediate and overwhelming, but her first thought wasn't about herself. It was about her friends, about getting everyone to safety, about surviving this incomprehensible attack. The van's driver, despite the chaos and terror, made a decision that would prove crucial. Instead of stopping, instead of surrendering to the attackers, they kept the van moving. Through shattered windows and damaged steering, they navigated away from the intersection where their friends were bleeding and dying. Inside the van, the women tried to help each other while dealing with their own injuries and shock. Blood covered the interior surfaces, and everyone was trying to assess who was hurt worst while encouraging each other to stay conscious and keep fighting. The drive to the hospital became a race against time that Princess was already losing. Her friends applied pressure to wounds, called out directions to the driver, and did everything they could to keep each other alive. But Princess was slipping away despite their desperate efforts. When the van finally reached the emergency room, Princess had stopped responding to her friends' voices. The woman who had been laughing about the concert just minutes earlier was now beyond the reach of medical intervention. The random violence that claimed Princess's life was about to reveal a truth that would make her death even more senseless than anyone could have imagined. 3 days into the investigation, detectives made a discovery that changed everything they thought they knew about Princess Tolliver's murder. The breakthrough came when they analyzed cell phone data from the suspects and cross-referenced it with social media activity from the night of the concert. Princess Tolliver and her 5 friends had been executed for absolutely nothing. The real target wasn't any of the women in that Mercedes Sprinter van. The real target was Jack Boy, the rapper who had performed at the concert that night. Gang members had spent weeks planning what they believed would be a career-defining hit, killing a famous musician to earn respect within their criminal organization. But Jack Boy had left the venue in a completely different vehicle, surrounded by his own security team, and was probably already back in his hotel room when Princess and her friends were being slaughtered on County Road 46A. The gang members who coordinated this attack belonged to a criminal organization called OTF, On Top Forever, which operated as a subgroup of the larger Crips network. For these men, violence wasn't just about territory or money. It was about reputation, about proving their worth to higher-ranking criminals, about earning what they called street validation. And their plan to earn that validation involved murdering a rapper over an Instagram feud. The dispute between Jack Boy and another artist, Bill Capri, better known as Kodak Black, had been playing out across social media platforms for months. What started as competitive trash talk between musicians had escalated into something far more dangerous when gang members decided to involve themselves in the conflict. Detectives discovered that OTF members had been monitoring both rappers' social media accounts, tracking their performance schedules, and identifying opportunities to strike. The Sanford concert represented what they saw as a perfect chance to ambush Jack Boy in a location where they could control the environment. Sheriff Dennis Lemma would later describe the investigation as incredibly complicated and one of the most significant follow-up investigations in his department's history. What made the case so complex wasn't just the number of suspects involved, it was the sophisticated level of planning that had gone into organizing the attack. The gang had stolen 2 vehicles specifically for this operation, coordinated the movements of 4 different cars, and assigned specific roles to more than a dozen participants. Some members were responsible for surveillance, others for the actual shooting, and still others for creating escape routes and disposing of evidence. But despite all that planning, they had made one catastrophic mistake: they never confirmed who was actually in the vehicles they were targeting. As detectives executed search warrant after search warrant, eventually totaling 120 separate legal actions, the scope of the criminal enterprise became clear. These weren't random thugs who had decided to commit a crime on impulse. This was an organized gang with hierarchical structure, communication protocols, and a history of violent crimes designed to enhance their reputation. Phone records revealed extensive coordination between gang members in the hours leading up to the shooting. Text messages showed them sharing locations, confirming weapons availability, and discussing escape routes. Social media evidence demonstrated their obsession with the Jack Boy Kodak Black feud and their belief that killing one of the rappers would elevate their status within the criminal community. The digital evidence painted a picture of young men who had become so immersed in gang culture that they genuinely believed murdering a musician over online drama was a logical career move. They had convinced themselves that this attack would earn them respect from other criminals and advance their positions within the OTF hierarchy. What they had actually done was guarantee themselves life sentences for killing an innocent woman who worked for a police department and had never heard of their gang or their petty conflicts. The investigation revealed that gang members had been tracking multiple vehicles leaving the concert venue, looking for any group that might include their target. When they spotted the Mercedes Sprinter van with 6 young women inside, someone made the decision that this was close enough to their original plan. The level of indifference to human life was staggering. These men were perfectly willing to kill 6 strangers on the possibility that one of them might be someone they wanted dead. The fact that they were wrong about the vehicle's occupants was irrelevant to them. They had committed to violence, and they were going to follow through regardless of who died. Federal prosecutors eventually brought RICO charges against the suspects, treating the case as an example of organized criminal enterprise rather than a simple murder. The Racketeer, Influenced, and Corrupt Organizations Act allowed law enforcement to target not just the shooters, but the entire network that had planned and supported the attack. The RICO charges reflected the reality that Princess Tolliver's murder wasn't an isolated incident. It was the product of a criminal organization that regularly used violence to achieve its goals, that treated human life as disposable, and that operated with the kind of coordination typically associated with much larger criminal enterprises. Electronic evidence showed gang members using encrypted messaging apps to coordinate their activities, social media platforms to track their targets, and sophisticated communication networks to avoid detection by law enforcement. This wasn't street-level thuggery. This was organized crime adapted for the digital age. The most disturbing revelation was how easily the violence could have been prevented. If the gang members had taken 5 minutes to confirm their target's location, Princess Tolliver would still be alive. If they had shown even minimal concern for innocent life, 6 women would have made it home safely to Tallahassee. Instead, they had chosen to prioritize their reputation over human decency, and that choice had cost Princess everything. For 13 months after Princess Tolliver's murder, her family lived with the knowledge that her killers were still free. 13 months of wondering if the men responsible would ever face consequences for destroying their lives. 13 months of watching the legal system work slowly while their grief remained fresh and immediate. Then on February 23, 2024, everything changed. Before dawn that morning, law enforcement agencies across Central Florida executed one of the largest coordinated arrest operations in recent memory. Marshals Service, Seminole County Sheriff's Office, Orlando Police Department, Orange County Sheriff's Office, and FBI Safe Streets Task Force had spent months planning this moment. 13 suspects were taken into custody simultaneously, preventing any possibility of flight or evidence destruction. The operation required precise timing and extensive resources, with teams positioned at multiple locations to ensure no one escaped the net that had been carefully constructed around them. The arrests weren't random sweeps or desperate attempts to close a difficult case. Each suspect had been identified through painstaking detective work, digital forensics, and witness testimony. The evidence against them was overwhelming, built through those 120 search warrants and months of investigation that had mapped out the entire criminal network. When Seminole County prosecutors announced the charges on March 12, 2024, the scope of the legal action was unprecedented for the region. 12 individuals faced first-degree premeditated murder charges for Princess's death, along with 5 counts each of attempted first-degree premeditated murder for the surviving victims. The lead suspects included Alvarez Cosby, 36, who faced additional charges for directing the activities of a criminal gang. Rovante Lamar Daniels, 29, and Riquaries Antonio Malik Davis, 24, were also charged with using electronic communications to promote gang activities. Thalas Jerome Inman, 22, faced an additional grand theft auto charge for his role in stealing one of the vehicles used in the attack. But the dragnet extended beyond the shooters themselves. Daneka Danny Francis Hare was charged with perjury in the prosecution of a capital offense, accused of lying to investigators to protect the perpetrators. Valerie Shavantia Smith faced charges as an accessory after the fact to a capital felony, allegedly helping suspects evade capture. The most wanted suspect, Trevin Vasco Law, remained at large for 2 additional months after the initial arrests. When he was finally captured in April 2024, he faced the same murder and RICO charges as his co-conspirators, closing the final gap in the prosecution's case. Princess's family released a statement following the arrests that revealed both their relief and their continued pain. Each action, each arrest has potentially saved another family from enduring this unspeakable heartbreak and loss, they wrote. We should all be forever grateful. The statement reflected something remarkable about how Princess's loved ones had chosen to process their tragedy. Rather than focusing solely on their own loss, they had transformed their grief into a mission to prevent other families from experiencing similar devastation. Barbara Flynn Tolliver, Princess's grandmother, had never imagined she would spend her golden years attending court hearings for her granddaughter's murder case. Never dreamed anything like this would happen to one of my grandchildren, she had said, capturing the surreal reality that many families of violent crime victims must navigate. Princess's friends Shanae Ham and Dominique Jones became unexpected advocates for violence prevention, speaking publicly about their experience and the broader implications of gang culture. I just don't want this to be someone else's sister or someone else's friend, they said, channeling their trauma into a message that transcended their personal loss. The legal proceedings themselves became a testament to how seriously the justice system was taking Princess's case. The decision to pursue first-degree murder charges against all 12 primary suspects sent a clear message that being a secondary participant in a gang killing wouldn't result in reduced accountability. The RICO charges were particularly significant because they allowed prosecutors to target the criminal enterprise as a whole, rather than just the individuals who pulled triggers. This approach meant that everyone who contributed to the planning, coordination, or execution of the attack could face life sentences, regardless of their specific role. As the cases moved through the court system, they highlighted broader questions about how communities should respond to the intersection of social media, gang culture, and random violence. Princess's death had occurred because strangers decided that online drama was worth killing for, raising uncomfortable questions about the role of digital platforms in escalating real-world conflicts. Her story also demonstrated the ripple effects of gang violence on communities that consider themselves safe from such threats. Seminole County wasn't known for organized crime or street gangs, yet Princess had been murdered there by criminals who saw the area as simply another venue for their violence. The ongoing legal proceedings serve as a reminder that justice in complex murder cases requires years of sustained effort. Each court appearance, each legal motion, each day of testimony represents another step toward accountability for Princess's death. But perhaps the most powerful legacy of Princess Tolliver's life is how her family and friends have refused to let her memory be defined solely by the violence that took her. They remember her laughter, her kindness, her dedication to helping others, and her love for the people closest to her. Princess deserved to grow old, to build the family she had dreamed of, to advance in her career helping others through the FSU Police Department. She deserved to attend many more concerts with her friends and create many more cherished memories. Her killers stole all of that from her, but they couldn't steal the impact she had made on everyone who knew her.